Captain Thomas Sankara history. Why was he assassinated? Who assassinated him? Thomas Sankara is a Pan-Africanist revolutionary leader. He inspired millions of Africa. He changed the image of Africa and the image of Burkina Faso. He is one of the greatest African heroes of all time. He was nicknamed the Che Guevara of Africa. Who is really Thomas Sankara? Listen his story to the end. You know more about him, his early life, military career, politic career, wife and the children, and his legacy. Why and how was he assassinated? Who assassinated him? Don't forget to make a subscribe, like, share, and comment. His complete name was Thomas Isdoinwe Sankara, but he's popularly known as Captain Thomas Sankara. He was born on 21 December 1949 in Yako, Upper Volta, actually is Burkina Faso. Thomas Sankara was the third of the 10 children. His father was Joseph Sankara and his mother was Margaret Sankara. His father, Joseph Sankara, was a gendarme of Sirimi Mosi heritage, while his mother, Sankara, was of direct Mosi descent. Thomas Sankara spent his early years in Gaua, a town in the humid southwest, to which his father was transferred as an auxiliary gendarme. As the son of one of the few African functionaries then employed by the colonial state, he enjoyed a relatively privileged position. The family lived in a brick house with the family of the other gendarmes at the top of hill overlooking the rest of Gaua. Thomas Sankara attended the primary school at the Bobo Dioulasso. He applied himself seriously to his school work and excelled in mathematics and French. Thomas Sankara went to church often, and he was impressed with his energy and the eagerness to learn. Some of the priests encouraged him to go on the seminar school. Once he finished the primary school, despite initially agreeing, he took the exam required for the entry to 6th grade in the secular educational system, and he passed. Thomas Sankara's decision to continue with his education at the nearest lycée Kweze Coulibaly, named after a pre-independence nationalist, proved to be a turning point. Thomas Sankara left his father's household to attend the lycée in Bobo Dioulasso, the country's commercial center. His Roman Catholic parents wanted him to become a priest, but he chose to enter in the military. The military was popular at the time. Many young intellectuals viewed the military as a national institution that might potentially help to discipline inefficient and corrupt bureaucracy, counterbalance inordinate chiefs, and generally help modernize the country. Acceptance into the military academy was accompanied by a scholarship. Sankara could not easily afford the cost of further education. Otherwise, Sankara took the entrance, the exam, and passed. Thomas Sankara entered the military academy of Kadiogo in Ouagadougou, Upper Volta's capital. He entered the military in 1966 at the age of 17. The trained officers were taught by civilian professors in the social science. Adama Touré, who taught history and geography, was the academic director at the time, known for having progressive ideas, although he did not publicly share them. He invited a few of his brightest and more political students, among them Thomas Sankara, to join informal discussion outside the classroom about imperialism, neocolonialism, socialism, and communism, the Soviet and the Chinese Revolution, the liberation movements in Africa. This was the first time Thomas Sankara was systematically exposed to evolutionary perspective on Upper Volta and the world. Aside from his academic and extracurricular political activity, Thomas Sankara also pursued his passion for music. He played the guitar in a band called Tutaku Jazz. In 1970, at the age of 20, Thomas Sankara went to further military academy of Ansirabe in Madagascar, from which he was graduated as a junior officer in 1973. At the Ansilab Academy, Thomas Sankara studied many subjects like agriculture, where he studied how to raise crops yield and the better lives of farmers. During that period, Thomas Sankara read profusely on history and military strategies. Thomas Sankara was also influenced by French leftist professor in Madagascar. Military career. After his basic military training in secondary school in 1966, he began his military career at the age of 19. A year later, he was sent in Madagascar, where he witnessed the popular uprising in 1971 and 1972 against the government of President Philibert Tsiranana. During his period, he first read the works of Karl Marx and Vladimir Lenin, which profoundly influenced his political views for the rest of his life. When he returned in Upper Volta in 1972, Thomas Sankara fought in a border war between Upper Volta and Mali in 1974. Thomas Sankara earned fame for his performance in that war. In 1976, Thomas Sankara became commander of the Commando Training Center in Nepal, where Thomas Sankara and the other young officers like Blaise Compaoré, Jean-Baptiste Lingani formed a secret organization called RLC. Thomas Sankara ranked as captain in military rank. Government post. Captain Thomas Sankara was appointed Minister of Information by President Said Zarubo in 1981. Thomas Sankara differentiated himself from other government officials in many ways, such as biking to work every day instead of driving a car. He encouraged investigative journalism and allowed the media to print whatever it found. Captain Thomas Sankara resigned on 12 April 1982 in opposition to what he saw the regime's anti-robber drift, declaring misfortune to those who gagged the people. Mare Asaki Bayonero Pepre. On 7 November 1982, another military coup brought the power Major Dr. Jean-Baptiste Ouedraogo. In January 1983, Major Dr. Jean-Baptiste Ouedraogo named Thomas Sankara as the Prime Minister of the Upper Volta, but Captain Thomas Sankara was dismissed in May 1983 after Captain Thomas Sankara was arrested after the French President African Affairs advisor Guy Pen, Hari Zongo, and Jean-Baptiste Bukari Lingani were also placed under arrest. His imprisonment created enough momentum for his friend Blaise Compaoré to lead another military coup. Presidents from 1983 to 1987. On 4 August 1983, Captain Blaise Compaoré organized a military coup which made Captain Thomas Sankara president at the age of 33. Captain Thomas Sankara is identified as a revolutionary leader, and he was inspired by examples of Cuba's Fidel Castro and Ernesto Che Guevara and John Jerry Rawlings, Ghana's military leader in that time. As the president, Captain Thomas Sankara promoted the Democratic Popular Revolution. The ideology of the revolution was defined by Sankara as anti-imperialist. His policy was oriented toward fighting against corruption and promoting reforestation. On 4 August 1984, the first anniversary of power accession, Captain Thomas Sankara renamed the country Burkina Faso, which means the land of upright people in Mole and Jula, the two major languages of the country. He also gave it a new flag and wrote a new anthem known as the Tanye Council of the Revolution. When Captain Thomas Sankara assumed the power on 4 August 1983, he named the leadership of the country the Council of National Revolution, CNR. This was a way of Thomas Sankara to signal that he was going to try for political and social change. The CNR was composed by both civilian and soldiers. They helped give advice and direction to the government actions, healthcare and public works. Captain Thomas Sankara's first priorities after taking office were feeding, housing, and providing medical health care to his people who desperately need it. He launched a mass vaccination program aimed at eradicating polio, meningitis, and the measles. From 1983 to 1985, 2 million of people were vaccinated, significantly improving public health outcomes. Prior to Sankara's presidency, the infant mortality in Burkina Faso was about 20.8%. During his time in office, it fell to 14.5%. His administration was also the first African government to publicly recognize the AIDS epidemic as a major threat to Africa. In addition to healthcare, Captain Thomas Sankara focused on large-scale housing and infrastructure projects. He established brick factories to help build houses. This initiative provided affordable housing and creating jobs contributed to economic stability, fighting against deforestation. To fight against deforestation, Thomas Sankara organized the planting of several million trees. Education. Thomas Sankara also prioritized the education to combat the country's 90% illiteracy rate. His administration implemented successful significant program, resulting in significant improvement in literacy. Agriculture. In Sankara's 5-year plan, some 71% projected investment for the productive sectors were allocated to agriculture, livestock, fishing, wildlife, and forest. The use of fertilizers increased by 5,600 of tractors were bought and imported for the large-scale cooperative project. Hundreds of village cereal banks were built for collective labor organized by the CDR to help farmers store and market their crops. In August 1984, all lands was nationalized. Previously, local chiefs had decided who could farm. The total cereal production rose to 75 between 1983 to 1986. In 4 years, United Nations analysts declared that Burkina Faso's agriculture as productive is enough to be food self-sufficient. Women rights. Captain Thomas Sankara improved the women's status in Burkina Faso society, and he included a large number of women in his government. His government banned the female genital mutilation, forced marriage, and polygamy. He also promoted the contraception, and he removed all restriction on contraception. He also established a Ministry of Family Development, and he was in the Union of Burkina Faso. And the Union of Burkina Faso Women. Captain Thomas Sankara was the first African leader to appoint women to major cabinet positions. Relation with other countries. Captain Thomas Sankara defined his program as anti-imperialist. In this respect, France became the main target revolutionary rhetoric. In response, France reduced its economic aid to Burkina Faso by 80% between 1983 and 1986. Captain Thomas Sankara developed cooperation with other countries like Cuba, Ghana, Russia, and China. In Cuba, Captain Thomas Sankara sent young Burkinabe to receive professional training and to participate in the country's development upon their return. Captain Thomas Sankara's assassination. On 15 August 1987, Captain Thomas Sankara and 12 other officials were assassinated in a military coup organized by his former close friend, Captain Blaise Compaoré. When after that overthrow, Captain Blaise Compaoré stated that Thomas Sankara snubbed the foreign relation with former colonial power France, and he accused Thomas Sankara of plotting to assassinate the opponents. According to Haruna Traore, the sole survivor of Sankara's assassination, Captain Thomas Sankara was attending a meeting. The assassin singled out Captain Thomas Sankara and executed him. The assassin then shot at those attending the meeting, killing 12 persons. Sankara's body was laid out with barrett to the back, and he was quickly buried in an unmarkable grave. His widow, Mariam Sankara, and his two children fled the country few days after Sankara's assassination. After Sankara's assassination, many books were written in the way of paying tribute to him. Who killed Thomas Sankara, and how was he killed? Thomas Sankara was killed by his former close friend Captain Blaise Compaoré. By many sources say that he was helped by many countries, especially France and the other countries, because Captain Thomas Sankara had more enemies in Burkina Faso, in Africa, and in the foreign international, because he wanted to change the image of Burkina Faso and the image of Africa. He hated imperialism or neocolonialism, because he said that there is no difference between colonization and neo-colonization, that in that situation many African countries will never be totally independent. Trials. In 2017, the Burkina Faso government officially asked the French government to release documents on the killing of Captain Thomas Sankara after his widow Mariam Sankara accused France of masterminding his assassination. The French President Emmanuel Macron promised to declassify French documents concerning Sankara's assassination in April 2021. 34 years after Sankara's assassination, former President Blaise Compaoré and the 30 other persons were indicted for the complicity in the murder of Sankara, as well as other crimes in the cap. In October 2021, the trials against Blaise Compaoré and the other 30 persons began in Ouagadougou. On 6 April 2022, former President of Burkina Faso Blaise Compaoré and the two other persons were found guilty and sentenced to life in prison in absentia. 80 other persons were sentenced between 3 and 20 years in prison. 3 persons were found innocent. Exhumation. The exhumation of Thomas Sankara was denied during the rule of Captain Blaise Compaoré. In October 2015, one of the lawyers of Mariam Sankara's widow reported that the autopsy revealed that Sankara's body was riddled with more than a dozen bullets. In 2025, Captain Thomas Sankara and those who killed alongside him in the 1987 military coup were interred on a mausoleum built in the site of Conseil de l'Attente in Ouagadougou, where he was killed. Thomas Sankara's legacy. Thomas Sankara is one of the beloved African heroes. He inspired millions of Africans, especially young people. Accompanying his personal charisma, Captain Thomas Sankara had an array of his original initiative that contributed to his popularity and brought some international media attention to his government. So, solidarity. Number 1, solidarity. Thomas Sankara sold off the government flag of Mercedes cars and made the Renault 5 the cheapest car sold in Burkina Faso at that time. He reduced the salaries of public servants, including his own, and forbade the use of the government first-class airlines ticket. He opposed the foreign aid. He said that he will feed you, country you. He spoke in a forum like Organization of African Unity that he is against what he described as neocolonialism, penetration of Africa through Western trade and finance. He called for a united front of African nations to to repatriate their external debt. He argued that the poor and the exploited did not have an obligation to repay money to the rich and exploiting. He refused to use an air conditioning in his office on the ground that such luxury was not available to anyone but a handful of Burkinabe. As President Thomas Sankara lowered his salary to $450 a month and limited his possession to a car, 4 bikes, free guitar and refrigerator and a broken freezer style. He required the public servant to wear a traditional tunic, women from Burkinabe cotton and sewn by Burkinabe craftsmen. Thomas Sankara was also known for jogging unaccompanied from Ouagadougou in his track suit, posing his tailored military fatigue with his mother of pistol. When he was asked why he did not want his portrait hung in public place, as was the norm of other African leaders, Captain Thomas Sankara replied, "There are 7 million of Thomas Sankara, an accomplished guitarist who wrote the new nationalist anthem himself." International recognition. Cuba posthumously awarded Thomas Sankara as the highest honor of the State of the Order of Jose Marti. Many Africans, are still inspired by Captain Thomas Sankara. Their praise named Thomas Sankara in many African countries. Sankara is commemorated on 15 October in many African countries by Pan-Africanists. Africa's Che Guevara. Because of his idea, Captain Thomas Sankara was nicknamed the African Che Guevara. Thomas Sankara gave a speech marking and honoring the 20th anniversary of the Che Guevara's 9 October 1967 execution. Thomas Sankara said it 1 week before Thomas Sankara assassination on 15 October 1987. Thomas Sankara is one of the greatest president of Africa and one of the greatest hero of Africa. What do you love to Captain Thomas Sankara? Which speech of Captain Thomas Sankara do you love? Tell us in the comments. Thank you for listening, guys. God bless you.